Uncle Joseph and Professor Elena Fyodorakopoulos for your many and useful recommendations and suggestions. So I'm very glad, and I would like also to thank my supervisor, Professor Enriqueta Socio. She is my precious guide in this path. So, good morning, everyone. As you probably may know, Robert Graves was deeply engaged with classical antiquity. His literary output demonstrates a profound understanding and creative interpretation of ancient texts. I, Claudius, one of his bestsellers, is a prime example of Graves' ability to breathe new life into historical figures and stories. My presentation today will delve into the construction of female characters within the novel, examining how Graves uses classical sources and his own imaginative ability to create compelling and enduring figures. These women, while rooted in historical context, are complex and modern individuals, living in a world of political intrigues and personal ambitions. I would like to start with Judy Chicago's feminist artwork, The Dinner Party. And why? Because a reference to a primordial goddess at the beginning resonates with Graves' concept of the white goddess, the mother of all living, which inspired his poetry and permeated his personal life. Graves' relationship with women, including his marriages and muses, were deeply influenced by his concept of the white goddess. These experiences, both positive and negative, shaped his understanding of gender, power, and creativity. Consequently, it is not surprising that women played a central role in Graves' literary output, both in his poetry, which often reflected his love life, and his prose fiction, where women were often the driving force. So, much has been written about Graves' use of historical sources and his construction of female characters, particularly in his celebrated I, Claudius' novels. Livia and Messalina have been broadly investigated as main antagonists of the novels, reflecting both contemporary and ancient issues. Minor characters such as Urgulania and Plancina have also been analyzed. However, an important character who hasn't been discussed sufficiently is Antonia Minor, or Antonia the Younger, whom Nikos Kokkinos describes, and I quote, as the greatest lady the empire ever produced, end of quote. As a matter of fact, I quote, she not only equaled Livia in status in the later part of her life, but on many counts, social, political, economic, even surpassed her, end of quote. So, despite the scarcity of information about Antonia, her influence can be still discerned. She is strictly connected to the Julio-Claudian emperors. The daughter of Mark Antony and Octavia, she was the celebrated niece of Augustus, sister-in-law of Tiberius, mother of Claudius, grandmother of Caligula, and great-grandmother of Nero. So, Jasper Burns has crafted a well-constructed depiction of Antonia in a chapter of his Great Women of Imperial Rome, Mothers and Wives of the Caesars. The lady is praiseworthy for her supreme beauty and her status of true univira, a one-man woman. She actively participated in the political life of the empire and was also responsible for the education of her children and numerous foreign princes and princesses. So, the first words we read about Antonia in I, Claudius embrace the portrait restored by antiquity as beautiful and noble woman. However, by using the phrase it will be supposed, Graves introduces the reader to a different picture of Antonia, an image that is reinforced later in the narrative. The novel, from Claudius' point of view, clearly devotes much space to examining his relationship with his mother. Antonia's actions and reactions are presented through a subjective lens, shaping our interpretation of her behavior. Notwithstanding her gentleness, beauty, and compassion, ancient sources also emphasize her conflicting relationship with Claudius, as we can read in this passage from Suetonius, where Antonia describes her son as a monstrum. Interestingly, the same passage appears in the novel, marking the beginning of Claudius' awareness of his mother's low opinion of him. Antonia's negative characterization and her low opinion of his son is strictly related to Claudius' many illnesses. However, the mention of a premature birth as the main cause of her aversion to him appears to be the result of Grace's imagination. After the premature and complex birth of her youngest child, she suffered for years afterward and remained largely infirm. But in the ancient sources, there is no mention of a premature birth caused by a shock. So, due to his numerous physical disability, Antonia considered his son incapable of significant achievement throughout all her life, and her contempt for Claudius, evident from his birth, remained constant until her death, which undoubtedly occurred during Caligula's rule. In her last encounter with Claudius at the end of the novel, her words painted the image of a woman consumed by self-regard with still no consideration for her son. She has disparaged her youngest child for his physical disability, and for this reason she believed herself to be punished. So while Claudius continued to love and respect her, she was still contemptuous of him, favoring her other sons and grandsons who unluckily perished. Yet, while often considering his child as a merely idiot, Antonia also played a crucial role within his upbringing. Sources agree upon her relevance in the education of noble men and women. For example, we can mention the poet Protagoras, but Graves is still more detailed, emphasize her role within Claudius' education. So, as observed elsewhere in the novel, Graves employs epigrams and prophecies with artistic license, and this is the case of this epigram, which serves a crucial function in characterizing the main characters. In an encounter with the Emperor Augustus, along with the Stoic philosopher Athenodorus, Claudius overhears Augustus jokingly criticize his mother Antonia for not buying an exotic pet marmoset, implying a reference to his son, elsewhere compared to a donkey. Crucially, Claudius, despite being considered outwitted, surprises everyone by understanding the Greek conversation and respondingly wittily. So I could understand what they were saying. As the language of literature, Greek was considered the cornerstone of a well-trained education, and in the case of Grace's novel, it serves as the language of Claudius's autobiography. So, by providing a glimpse into Claudius's childhood, not only does the passage reveal his intelligence and wit despite the low expectations surrounding him, but also highlight the importance of the education and the influence of strong female figures in his life. Notably, Claudius himself replies in Greek, relating his well-trained education to his mother. In fact, she is praised for choosing as a governess a woman who had learned Greek directly from Apollo and who at once serves as his priestess. Hence, the epigram is relevant in that it acknowledges the seminal role Antonia played in shaping Claudius's character. So, to conclude, the depiction of Antonia in the novel intertwines historical accuracy drawn from ancient sources with the critical perspective identified by Elisha Denman on Grace and Claudius. While classical antiquity portrays her as a model of the perfect Roman woman, Graves, with his invisible hand, subtly reinforces the negative image filtered through the eyes of Claudius. Claudius' suffering from his mother's contempt and lack of love appears to be the driving force behind his intellectual development, ultimately shaping his reign as emperor. Additionally, Antonia is praiseworthy for having introduced his son to Greek, that is the language of literature and of his autobiography, fostering his intellectual growth and contributing to his refined character. Therefore, this twofold connotation, I argue, allows us to consider Antonia as a prototypical version of the white goddess, alongside Lydia and Messalina. These women emerge as leading forces that significantly shape also the narrative and the history of Roman Empire. Grace's profound interest in the sexual and maternal powers of women likely resonates with the portrayal of imperial women we found in Tacitus and Suetonius, the two main historians of the empire. These historians, while often presenting Roman women in a highly sexualized light, also depicted them as figures of significant political power and agency. So Graves' profound interest in the feminine principle is a recurring theme throughout his literary works, encompassing both prose and poetry. Interesting, this fascination, as we can see, finds its roots in his deep engagement with classical antiquity that proves to be a continuous source of new insight and perspectives. So, addressing the main theme of this panel, I would like to conclude with a broader reference to Graves' invisible or visible hand as both novelist and scholar of the classical world. I came across some books by chance, and they immediately brought Graves to my mind. This is because what I found particularly striking is that these books, I Livia, I Claudia, and Io Agrippina, pay a tribute to Graves' work and his macrocosm, and specifically to his attention to feminine principle. Interestingly, a common thread concerns the feminine identity of these great writings, echoing the emphasis Graves placed on women, both in antiquity and in the modern world. So a clear allusion is visible in each title, a clever tribute to I Claudius. Apart from I Claudia, that is an essay on Roman women, both I Livia and Io Agrippina present themselves as feminine counterpart to Graves' seminal work. So I Claudius shifts from being the hypertext to being the hypotext for subsequent narratives on the ancient world. And what is truly distinctive is that since the publication of I Claudius' works, no rewriting of this era can fully overlook the profound influence of Graves' novel that shapes up to be a masterpiece of a brilliant mind. Thank you for the attention.